Hey Moonies, welcome to the Sailor Moon Fan Club podcast. I'm your host, Victoria L. Johnson, and I'm here with Karama Horne, aka the Blurred Girl. If you don't know, which I don't know if why you wouldn't know, but she is a culture journalist, content creator, host of the Blurred Girl Live, where she interviews incredible people, including some Moonies like Kid Fury, Danny Lore, and LL McKinney, who's actually on this podcast as well. She's also the author of the upcoming book, Protectors of Wakanda, a history and training manual of the Dora Milaje. Hey,
Hey,
Karama.
hi Victoria. How are you? This is so awesome. I'm glad we could finally make it work.
Me too. It's a long time coming, but welcome to the Sailor Moon Fan Club.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, first question I like to ask everybody is, what is your first memory of watching Sailor Moon?
It is definitely Toonami in the 90s. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, because my brothers watched it too, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was like somewhere between Voltron and Thundercats in
Mhm.
there, like because they had that block. So it's
Yeah.
somewhere like it was like either Voltron, Thundercats, Sailor Moon, or Sailor Moon, Voltron, Thundercats, and then like Johnny Quest or something. But it was in
Mhm.
this block, and that was the part that they would not watch. So I had some peace. But that's what I would watch. And I didn't it's funny because I got into it much later. I actually was more of a shonen person, and then a friend of mine was into it, and then I can't remember which sailor she introduced me to first, but I was like, "Oh, okay, they're not just like running around being cute. There's actually like a story to this. Okay, I like this."
Yeah, there is a story. I feel like that's what makes it one of the things that makes it so great. It's like, oh, these are girls actually like fighting, doing stuff.
I'm
Um,
actually looking forward to like sort of doing a rewatch with friends and on net when it drops on Netflix.
yeah, I mean, it's all on Hulu.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely. I think it's fun. It's a fun rewatch. I've done it a few times. Yeah, that sounds fun. I think I also was watching that. I was skipping Johnny Quest though, but I was also
Yeah,
watching the whole
that
block.
was a thing my brother said, but it was in that block.
Yeah.
Because I remember like we would just turn it on and it would just be on
Mhm.
for hours.
Right. Yeah. I was definitely watching that same block because I love Thundercats, but I don't know what it was about Johnny Quest. I was just like, not feeling it. Time to switch to Nickelodeon. But do you have any favorite episodes or moments from the show?
I think the favorite moments, it's weird because I remember when you said you were going to ask this question, I was thinking about it. And
Mhm.
I think my favorite overall moment is probably every time Sailor Moon had some crazy reaction. Like she just would always say something crazy or scream really crazy, and it didn't matter whether or not it was the sub or the dub. She always sounded insane. But it was always like the inadvertently sexual sounding stuff that was, of course, would make it to the airwaves or make it like every time somebody was like walking in the room. Um, and then I really feel like I don't know what episode it was, but it was a really, really funny one when she like uh oh goodness, I can't remember the name of the guy that she was in love with that was on the motorcycle. Oh, this is bothering me.
Okay, got
Darius?
Darian. Darian.
Darius?
Darian.
Darian. That's who it was. So
Yeah.
Darian like showed up and she
Oh,
was
the
like
girl in the back.
screaming. Yeah, well, no, I don't think she could see that there was a girl. She was far away, but all she knew
Okay.
was Darian, and she was like running and squealing and
Mhm.
just jumping and everything. And it was just so funny her whole reaction because she was like supposed to be doing her homework and all this stuff, and she was like,
Mhm.
and it was just so I think a lot of the stuff, and they always exaggerated her as being like kind of like when she wasn't like transforming, she was really goofy and relatable and stuff, and so I just found her stuff hilarious. I think not my favorite scene, but one of the most memorable. um and it's funny because my boyfriend compares this scene to when Goku first like grew his tail and got his powers and like went berserk.
That's
But
funny.
but when Sailor Mercury died, well, the timeline is crazy. I'm
Yeah.
gonna say it was the first time for me, but then I think when I found out the lore, it was probably like her third or second or something. But
Okay.
it was the first when she was fighting Queen Barrow and the
Okay.
glacier and stuff, because it was sort of like, oh my god, like they she's gonna die.
Yeah.
And then for me, I was just surprised because American cartoons, they don't kill anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why Batman has to keep beating the same people and putting them back in Gotham,
Arkham
Arkham
system.
Asylum. Like,
Yeah.
if Joker died, this wouldn't be a problem. You do realize this.
Right.
So,
Very,
but
very
it
easy
was a,
job.
sorry, this just moved on me. Sorry.
Of course.
Um, but it was really it was just kind of shocking. And then when you thought she was dead, until she reaches up and she's like, I'm not gone yet, and just sets her on fire and everything.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's Sailor Mars.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I said Sailor Mars. Yes,
Oh, I'm
it was
sorry. You
Sailor
probably did. I
Mars.
heard Mercury for some reason,
I'm
but
sorry. I'm sorry. No, in my head, I'm seeing all the reds. So yeah, no,
okay.
it's Sailor Mars, and I
Yeah, yeah.
apologize if I said Sailor Mercury.
It's
No, it
fine.
was
We are.
absolutely Sailor Mars,
Mhm.
and Sailor Moon was begging her not to do it and not to die, and because she knew
Yeah.
she
She
was
was like the
gonna.
last one.
And she
Mhm.
was like, "Nope, I got this. It's
Yeah.
okay. I got this." And then she was lying there regretting, like she didn't have that kiss, and she didn't have, it was just so.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that that's like my favorite, but I think it's one of my most memorable because I was like, "Damn!" And she really became my favorite. And then I got tired of her dying for everybody. I'm like, I need you to stop. I need you to stop. I need you to live, girl, live.
They gotta die every season. It's just part of but that was the first time she did die though. So
Right.
so that was you were right on that for sure. And yeah, it's so memorable. And you're right, like I think that was the first cartoon show that I watched when I was younger, when I was like, this is animated and people are dying. Like, what is going on? Um
Exactly. Like
and
that's a thing.
I was talking to my dad like a few months ago, and we were talking about randomly, I think because he knows I have the podcast and stuff. And I was talking about Queen Beryl, and he's like, "Oh, did they ever like defeat her?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, what happens? Like she gets away or something?" And I was like, "No, they killed her."
They kill her.
And he was just like, "You were watching this?"
That's what I'm saying. Parents didn't know because they thought it was just like the rest of the cartoons. It's like,
Right.
no, they died.
No, they
Like,
died.
that's
Like
why I
she
tell people,
they
I had
died.
somebody who hit me up who doesn't know that much about anime that was like, listen, my son really wants to watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I'm like, honey, he's 8. No, not yet. Not yet. He's not ready. Even Beyond the Death, the Homunculus, I'm like, he's not ready.
No.
No,
Oh gosh.
no, but she didn't know. She's just thinking, oh, it's animated. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
if it's anime, you can't do that because anime
Mhm.
stays killing children. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like I'm thinking of like the like lust and like how
Yeah,
they behave. Like, oh my
exactly.
gosh,
I
that is
told
not
her
appropriate.
Disney kills the parents, anime kills the kids.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good rule. I mean, or a mantra or something, like it's
So
so true.
if they can handle like somebody losing a parent, then they're okay.
Mhm. Losing kids, yeah. But yeah, that is a great moment. I actually rewatched that recently because I referenced it in a Polygon article I wrote on the Sailor Senshi versus the Avengers.
Mm.
I was just talking about like Sailor Mars' like tenacity and like iron will, and that like totally shows it. She's like, nope, not dead yet. I'm gonna do one more attack. So
Right, right. She was. I could do this all day. Like she's
right,
really. And you know what's funny? I have to look at that article because that's a really good analogy. Because
it
of
was
all,
fun.
because I think people think of like Airbender a lot, but honestly, yeah, it's more Avengers because of the
Yeah,
different, just the types of powers and their personalities. That's really good.
yeah. I had Sailor Moon versus Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
Sailor Mercury versus Black Widow because they're both like tactical. Sailor Mars went up against Hawkeye because they both have
Mm-hmm.
like arrow attacks.
That's
So
true.
pretty fun. Of course, like Jupiter and Thor, and then Venus and Captain America. Oh, and Tuxedo Mask versus Hulk.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that. Okay.
Only because like Hulk was the last one left that didn't match up with anyone, and I was like, I'm gonna put up against Tuxedo Mask because that would be like funny.
It would be. No, it would
Yeah.
be. And then it could also be like Tuxedo Mask
Mhm.
versus Bruce Banner because they could match wits.
Oh, I didn't even think about
They
that.
could
That
because
would
they
be
would go
cool.
toe to toe in an argument all day
Yes.
because he likes
Yeah.
to argue.
Yes, he does. That would be fun. I do think Bruce Banner is smarter, but But yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun. And then of course you kind of like alluded to this, but like who is your favorite Sailor Scout or Senshi, of course?
This is tough
Mhm.
because, like I said, I thought it was Mars, and
Mhm.
then she kept dying, and I was like, "Stop! I don't like this." Um, and then, I mean, a lot of people died, but I just it was like that. Not your fave, you know. And
Right.
then when I met, and I cannot remember the order of meeting everybody,
That's fine.
but Jupiter, because
Mhm.
she was just like, I think when you first meet Jupiter, I think Sailor Moon was fending off some bullies or something, right? And she was like, she just always seemed to be like, I need you to stop. Just stop. That's what I need. And like
Right.
whatever she was, and I'm like, I like her. I like, because that just that attitude.
Mhm.
Um, but then so it's a toss up between Jupiter and Pluto. And
Mhm.
Pluto, because, well, one, I'm a Scorpio. Pluto is our planet. And yes, Pluto's a planet. I don't care what anybody says.
I agree.
Um and I also think that um I thought she was great because of just her her commitment and everything like that. But then when you found out that she could like freeze time and stuff like that, and that she had this whole other
Mhm.
job that, was guarding the door of time and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's like Doctor Strange level stuff. Yes, okay, I like this. I like this. I want you to, yes. So Pluto quickly became my favorite as well. But I would kind of bounce back and forth or look to the two of them. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, you don't like Sailor Moon. And it's like, it's not that I don't like her. It's just that I'm the oldest and I'm the only girl. And so I just could relate to the ones that were coming in like, stop it.
Right.
Stop.
Stop fighting.
Right. That was, I just could relate to that energy because that
Mhm.
was just me.
No, that makes all the sense. I totally get it. And I also love, like, I love Sailor Moon. Sailor Pluto is like my top three for that reason. Like, I have a key, she's on my keys. I have a
Aw.
keychain of her because I'm like, she's a guardian of time, with like the time key.
Yep.
So I'm like, she's gonna be on my
Like the
keys.
time stone, like just the whole, and
Yeah.
also like the time stone is green, Pluto's green. It was just a
Yes.
thing for me that it just was like, um, because it's not that I got into comics first. I was really into animation and anime first, and then comics and manga after. Because I remember when I was like, wait, there's books,
Right.
like,
Right. What is this? Mhm. I had the
um,
same realization.
so yeah, I definitely think I am I lean my she's green, like I lean into Pluto.
Mhm.
But I do still really like Jupiter, and I respect Mars. I do, because she's like, listen, if someone's got to take one for the team, I'll be that person,
Right.
sacrifice themselves. But sometimes I'm like, Mars, not yet.
Right. You don't
Like, you ain't
always
gonna
have
die
to.
yet, like, hold up.
You have to jump in the fire every time.
Right. You might want to just put the fire out. Like, you don't have to throw your body on it and burn to death. Like, you could just
It's options. Which,
right.
it's funny though, you mentioned the green because Sailor Jupiter is also green. So it's
Yes.
like definitely there. I also love green. It's my birthstone, emerald.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like Jupiter's green. That's why it's like, you saw me before, like switching colors. I'm like, is it
Yeah.
red? Is it green? I don't have. You can't really put up black because Pluto's kind
Mhm.
like black, but I'm wearing black, so
Ooh, there you go.
so
All coordinated. I love it. Yeah.
the
The
people who
Sailor
are listening to this are gonna be so confused.
it's fine. We'll get it. That's all that matters. But yeah, I really love Sailor Pluto because he's just so badass. Super, super badass. So yeah, great choices. There are
Thank
no
you.
wrong answers, but great choices. um, I do want to talk a little bit about you because not only about Sailor Moon on this show. I'm curious, you mentioned like getting into animation first. So what would you say is your first like introduction to like a nerdy property?
Well, okay, so this part is very strange.
Okay.
And it's funny when I get asked this question. I come from a nerdy household.
Okay.
I didn't know it was strange
Same.
until I went out. So, like, we always, the whole family stopped when Star Trek came on. Everybody watched. Well, no, I would argue with my dad over like Babylon 5 because I was like, it's the fake Star Trek. It's not, I know, but I'm just saying that was our argument. And then,
Mhm.
like, we had a family account to Crunchyroll before people knew what Crunchyroll was. And my brothers would like bust into in the night. You have to be in the 90s person to understand this, but they
Mhm.
would bust open like the DVDs and make them region free so that we could we were watching Japanese anime without the subtitles and Chinese movies and stuff. And then my
Yeah,
mother, we were like, when she would get the channels, the Japanese channel, Chinese channel, and then literally when we got Crunchyroll, which was later like an account, we still to this day have a family Crunchyroll account.
I love that.
My mother's very confused now that
Oh,
Funimation and Crunchyroll have fused, but
I am too.
she's
So
very like, what's happening? I don't understand. But yeah, she would watch Korean dramas and Indian Bollywood movies, and I
Mhm.
just grew up with subtitles being a thing, so I didn't know that there was a problem. People are like, oh, I'm not watching the subtitles, and I'm like, that's your problem. It's
Yeah,
kind of like somebody saying like, I don't want to buy this house because the paint color's wrong. It's like, or I don't want to get this apartment because the paint color's wrong. It's like, but you can paint it.
right.
Like that's not
Like, what do
like
you mean?
it's very strange to me. Like when people say like, "Oh, I'm not gonna watch it because subtitles," and I'm like, because words, like words, are what
Yeah,
made you make this decision. Okay,
want to
uh,
read you.
so I grew up with, so we were watching like Batman the Animated Series and all of the animation stuff that would come on Saturday mornings. We had a lot of homework. My family was very much focused um on academics, but it was the moment the homework was done, but specifically more on Saturdays and Sundays, because it's like when
Mhm.
the chores were done, it was all either cartoons or martial arts stuff. And so that's what we were all watching. And then Toonami, the blocks were all out of, like, the blocks came out at the same time, but sometimes the shows were all out of order. Like you might not see the same um episode or it in sequence. I remember watching Bleach and going, wait, what's happening? And then it was another episode completely. Naruto, the same thing. So it was, i I just got into animation and then anime basically because of what we could get on TV. I grew up in Jersey, but it wasn't like we were near a comic book shop, and this was before bookstores. I remember the day I saw manga in like Barnes and Nobles. I was like, "Oh, we have arrived." Like it was not like that. So, I think even geeky stuff was not strange in my household. Even talk about science fiction and things like that, that none of that was strange. Um and nobody thought you were weird. Now, what was funny was, but I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, so that part was strange. Being black was weird, not being a geek. I didn't realize until I got to college that the geek part was strange. Because I'm talking to other people and I'm talking about, like I said, bleach and stuff like that. And they were like, what's a bleach? Are we talking about laundry? What's happening? And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm a different kind of weird here.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, it was just so I can't really remember the first thing. I just remember it was always there, and we were always trying to like watch Transformers or watch, but certain things like certain other shows. I think Sailor Moon might have been one of them. My brothers left me alone because it was like, ew, girly, and I was like, ew, you're boys. So
Well,
right, be gone. So it was, I was not lucky enough, none of us were lucky enough to have TVs in our rooms, but we did have a couple of TVs in the house, and we would, whichever one daddy wasn't on, we were,
right.
clamoring to watch. And so that's my earliest memory of being a geek, and just also being fascinated by Uhura, because I was like, "Ooh, black woman in the back listening to all the things. I could do that." So
Yeah.
that's my earliest geekdom, but I didn't know it was really weird until I was out in the world for a minute, and people going, "Dude, doing that thing, that nerd thing again," and like,
She's
really?
talking about the
Okay,
thing.
right? Because I could walk in my house and be like, and my brothers would completely understand me if I would go, I'm a, I'm a science, I'm not a paleontologist, I'm a doctor, damn
Mhm.
it, Jim, like they would get it.
Right.
Nobody else knew what the hell I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard out here for us. Yeah, I had a similar experience. Like my brothers were heavily into like anime and like comic books. And so I grew up with it being normal. And like I
right.
played video games like my whole life. And it wasn't until like I got to middle school and one girl was like, girls don't play video games. And I was like, they don't? Like all my cousins do. I do. Like that's a thing. Like girls are supposed to play video games. I think that's when I felt weird. It was like, oh, I'm a girl and like not supposed to be into anime, not supposed to be into comic books, not supposed to be into video games, but I'm like, but I like these things, so I'm still going to do them.
Yeah, and I also think for me, since I grew up with so many people like, oh, you're a black girl, wow, novel, like it was so
Mhm.
strange. Not strange, it's just I was around a lot of people where I was the only one,
Mhm.
that the concept of you don't, oh, I'm surprised you do this because you're a girl, like the gender
Mhm.
part
Right.
really didn't happen to me, I feel, until I was fully grown, because
Mhm.
so many more people, it was just, I feel like as a child, it was more I felt my blackness was
Mhm.
more of an issue or more odd than my gender, or at least that's how I was processing it.
Yeah. No.
Because we are in a very male dominated society. So I guess, I think I just processed it that way. But it wasn't until much later when I had people like, oh my God, why do you let men talk to you like that? And I'm like, men. Oh, white men. Oh, okay.
Right.
Because I was confused
Yeah.
because I was like, which I was always very awkward in that way because there's a lot. I grew up with two brothers. I was the only girl. I had guy friends. I was never
Mhm.
afraid to talk to guys. I was clueless when they were trying to hit on me or something. I was
Right.
completely clueless. But I just, so when people started talking about things later, and that was really funny to me because I thought Sailor Moon was very entertaining. It was much later that somebody was like, "Yeah, let me talk about the feminist principles behind the show," and I'm like, "What?
I
I'm
know.
listening." And then I had to watch it again, and I was like, "You know what? You're right." But
Mhm.
they didn't click, and I probably it's just age. It just
Yeah.
didn't click with me.
Yeah. And I should mention I grew up like in a predominantly black area, which is probably why like gender was the only thing. But yeah, I think I didn't realize that either until much later, how like rare and different it was, and how that's probably a good portion of why I enjoyed the show, other than it just having like good story and like fun characters and Serena's like whimsy goofiness. Like so
I will say this. I Because my brothers could get like I had friends too that would just get stuff on DVD and things like that. I did see some Sailor Moon episodes or some parts of it. I went through this with Dragon Ball too, that were not on Toonami. So when everybody was saying that Uranus and Neptune were cousins, I was like, no, they're not.
oh,
But
good for
I'd seen the
you.
but I'd seen the Japanese thing
Right.
I didn't realize it, but I'd seen the Japanese one first. So I was like, what? But it was the same thing with Dragon Ball because I remember trying to figure out where all the black stuff was on people when I saw it here,
Mhm.
and I'm like, oh, they color corrected the blood. Why did they do that? But because we had the FCC here, they had to change
Right.
it so it didn't look like it was violent and that people died and that was blood. And I was like, I fully saw a DVD where that was death and that was a lot of blood. So that's
Right.
not a lake he's lying in. That's blood. So yeah, there are certain things that didn't cross over, and I didn't even realize that the subs could be different than the dubs until much later when I was seeing stuff on YouTube, and I'm like, oh my God, that
Mhm.
whole episode I thought was something else.
Yeah, or whole episodes that were just like left out.
Yeah, and there were things that I saw that I was like, oh, maybe that was just part of like an OVA or just something I saw on that
Mhm.
DVD, not knowing it was an entire episode that got left out. And again, I was watching a lot of stuff out of order, but it
Right.
wasn't until much later you were like, oh my God, how much of this was sanitized?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize it until I rewatched it on Hulu and I was I never saw this episode. Like, oh, I don't remember it happening like this. Like, what is going on? Because I had only watched the dub for so long because the original Japanese version wasn't available.
Wasn't available, right?
Yeah, but I'm hoping, I wonder if it's on my desk. It's not. I bought a DVD for the first time, like
Oh,
not for the first time ever, for
no,
the
but
first
I
time in
mean
a
that.
really long time.
Yeah, yeah,
From a comic book store. I went to this comic book store and it was just like really like kind of like dusty a little bit in there. Like they had some like,
yeah.
vintage stuff. And
It's
I was
like
like,
the
this is so
last
cool.
they got a sale at the last Blockbuster.
Yeah. And I was like, I want to support. And I was like, but I don't want a DVD. I don't have a DVD player, but I was like, I'm still gonna buy it. And I wish I had it, but it's a Naughty and the Secret of Blue Water OVA. Um,
Oh,
yeah, and I was like,
okay.
I'll get this because I love the anime, and I don't think I watched the OVA anime, and I wish I knew where I threw it. I know it's somewhere in here. But yeah, but I was like, look at me buying an anime DVD, taking it back. It's so funny you mentioned that because I've just been kind of like, I bought an anime DVD the other day, like good for me. Now I
That's
have to find a
awesome.
DVD player. Yeah. I guess I have the PS4. I think that plays
Yeah, I
DVD.
was gonna say it should play DVD. That should, Xbox should,
Right.
because
Okay.
no laptops have those drives
Mine,
anymore.
no. I had like an external CD drive for a bit, but I don't know where it is. It's probably somewhere here too. But yeah, but just fun. Little tidbit. Well, outside of nerdy stuff, because once you like were like, I am, once you realized you were a nerd, you decided to like write about it. It's like what made you transition from like being a nerd to saying like I have something to say and I want to like share that with the world.
um, it's funny. It was, I wasn't even really thinking about sharing it with the world. I was thinking of
Yeah.
no longer annoying my friends. Um, because I think 2010, 2012. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying the concept of it
Mhm.
was definitely that early. 2010, 2012. And then
Yeah.
I had run other websites before, and I just decided, let me try it. Just Tumblr. Let me hop on here and just start a little Tumblr page about some of my favorite comics, but not just comics. There was still at that time, even back in 2010, there were a lot of people talking about Black folks in comics and more representation. And I'm like, okay, I know you're right. We need more representation. But I think there's a whole bunch of comics over here that you don't know about. And I would talk about Milestone, and I would talk about Sam Wilson, and I had a whole thing about uh basically all of the legacy of Captain America and how there were different black Captain Americas, and um Truth, Red, Black, and Blue, and Red, White, and Black rather. And and it's so funny because that original blog post turned into something that I wrote for about Isaiah Bradley for Marvel that they ended up putting on their site and then ended up in a comic book, which is kind of cool. But it was just really just me saying, hey, there's stuff, and also saying, hey, there's black comic book conventions, there's indie comics, there's artists, there's black people who draw this stuff. Like some people draw it for, and also there are artists and writers that work for Marvel and DC that also write for themselves and work on these indie stuff. Don't you want to check this stuff out? And so it kind of got popular because there was a lot of people that were curious about it. 2012, it kind of blew up, and I transitioned over to like a official WordPress site because I'm like, all right, let me take this a little bit more seriously. And then, Twitter and stuff like that followed, and Instagram and everything like that. And Instagram was the thing then, but it was really Twitter. And then basically I didn't intend, because here's the thing. I was a full-time video editor at the time. I was editing, I went to school for that, and it was I would edit commercial, short form, commercials, promos, things like that. And what happened was that Blurgirl was like my geekdom. And so that's why a lot of my early stuff didn't have my name on it. It was just the Blurgirl, because I was like, at that time, you didn't meld your hobbies with your, thing. It was not cool to have more than multiple. Now everybody is multi hyphenate, but that really wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Then, and so,
I feel like it was,
um,
sorry, very much like keeping your identity separate.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was. And it's funny because I had people that later wrote about me like, I don't know where her name is, but I was like, because it just wasn't done. Um, so now you want actually running into the opposite problem now with people not knowing my name because they just know the Blerd Girl. But now when you start websites and stuff, everybody tells you use your own name so that people can find you. Um, so yeah, but the concept of back in 2010, 2012, whatever, the concept of calling yourself a blurred, nobody was using the term. In fact, I had asked some friends of mine, like, or some people I knew in the community, like, Do you think it would be weird if I called myself the Blerd Girl? Because would anybody know what blurred means, or is that too obscure? And it was like, some people might know, but it was like the right people will know, like will know, and it'll be a good call sign for people who are into like genre entertainment, like comics, science fiction, horror, animation, anime, as well as people who are in the sciences and science geeks and things like that. Like it'll be a good way for us to find each other if we all, and I wasn't the person to coin the term whatsoever. I think somebody on Scrubs coined the term. But it was really I wasn't the only first person to use it. I wasn't the only person using it, but I just decided I'm gonna be the Blerd Girl and see what happens. And it blew up. But back then there weren't that many of us, and it was, there were still message boards. Tumblr was still a thing. Instagram wasn't. TikTok musically was not even a thought. It was just different. And so the way you found people was through a lot of message boards and things like that. Um your handles on like LiveJournal and AO3, like that's how you found each other, through like fan fiction and stuff. So a lot of us were using these names so that people would understand who we were, by that kind of call sign, as it were. It
Right.
you know it didn't have the meaning or the weight that it has now, and it also and I'm happy about that. But when people tell me like, oh, I'm not going to call myself a blurred, I refuse. Like, I don't think there's a need to, identify myself as that. There's plenty of Black people who like this stuff, and I go, you're welcome. That's fine. You don't have to.
You're not forcing
What are you?
them.
Right, yeah. What are you interested in? I'm not asking you. And that's a weird human trait. It's like the moment you call yourself something or claim something, somebody else says, "Well, do I have to?" Like like wearing a mask or drinking or not drinking. When you say, "Hey, yeah, I'm not going to be drinking," and it's like, "Well, I can drink, right?" Or somebody goes, "They don't smoke." Well, I can smoke, right?
It's like, yeah, like you do
Yeah,
whatever you want to do. I'm
it's
gonna do
like,
what I want to
well, I
do.
call myself a blurb. Well, I don't have to, right? No, nobody's. It's not about you.
The
So,
ambassador of all Black nerds.
right, I'm like, I don't, and also the moment Blurred sort of became mainstream, and it's weird because so many of us were trying to like build this community, and then it sort of went mainstream, and we were like, that's not what we asked. We just want to get paid for our knowledge. We weren't asking y'all to use it and run with it. It doesn't work that way. Um,
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, I again, I didn't coin the term. I don't own it. I can't run out there and tell everybody to give it back to me and pay me. Um, but I've had several people like, "Oh, maybe you should change your name." I'm like, "Oh no, it's trademarked. I'm not changing it." But I can, be here as a voice of reason to say, yeah, that's not how this started. It was really about a sense of community, and I specifically wanted Black women to know that there was other, people out here. Black Girl Nerds was one of them, but there was other outlets and other people or other websites. The only thing that I knew I couldn't do, because I still had a full-time job, was be a news site. I wasn't going to be the person that had the day-to-day. Mine was definitely going to be more op-ed and more thoughts and more concepts. That's what I was going to do. And I've been lucky. It's been kind of crazy, but I think what happened where I things blew up is, I think I mentioned I'm an editor, or I worked as an editor. And 2016, my day job and my geekdom collided because it was a company I was working for here in New York called Black Spot, and they were subcontracted by Sci-Fi to come out to California to be one of several teams of editors to work on the live shows that happened for San Diego Comic-Con. So like when stuff goes, it's kind of like editing in a truck. So we'd be in the hotel next door to the convention center, just all holed up in like a whole bank of hotel rooms with gear. And I was one of the few women, again, the only Black woman. And we were just in there all day, just stuff that was happening on the floor. We had feeds of what was going on, and we had to like edit it for social media, edit it for promos. There was a show that was coming on that night. There was all these, anytime anybody's like, "Hey, I'm live at the Star Trek booth here," we had that kind of stuff. We had to like edit all that footage together and get it out. And so, um, I sort of became sort of like a de facto producer, because when you have a freelance, that many freelancers in one place, they don't all have the same amount of knowledge. And so we had a lot of people that were good editors that didn't know what they were looking at. And so they were like, I need to know what Disney character that is. And it's like, that's Naruto. That's not, you
Ooh,
know,
yeah.
who's the old guy on the stage next to the chick? That's Peter Capaldi. That's Doctor Who. Um, aren't you editing the Doctor Who segment? What's happening? And
Yes.
that's not how you spell doctor. It's
No,
like all kinds of.
yeah.
So I sort of, that parlayed itself into other things. And I was asked to pitch a show for sci-fi. I pitched three. And one of them, the show turned into a series of interstitials that I actually ran, that I produced for all of 2017 and part of 2018. I'm sorry, end of 2018, part of 2019, on Sci-Fi Channel. If you watched Z Nation or anything, you might have caught like the little Sci-Fi Wire news blasts. That was my little show. So my everything started coalescing, and then by the time 2018 hit, it was just right place, right time. The year started with Black Lightning, then we had Black Panther. Tons of shows came out in the middle, and then the year ended with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So everybody was like, we need a Black person that knows some things. And
Right.
I was, again, the only one, but because I was the only one, I got to do a lot of stuff. And so it wasn't like I just kind of came out of nowhere. I had production experience. I had been doing the blogging for a minute, and I've been in the room. I tell people, I joke all the time, I'm like that undercover agent in Black Lady Sketch Show that's always in the room and nobody sees her. Um, and finally, they were like, "Oh, so you can do this," and I was like, "Yes."
You finally caught on there, did you? Yeah.
So there was still a learning curve. Like, I kind of look at some of my red carpets and cringe, but there was a learning curve. But I am very happy to say that I was able to do a lot of good work at Sci-Fi, and they also gave me a column writing about indie comics, and when I don't think many Black women had them. And so that's sort of how my little journalism career took off, even though I was already writing, and I was already going to conventions and I'm reporting from TheBlerdGurl, I'm Karama Horne, aka TheBlerdGurl. I've been saying that from jump. So I would never have been on camera with Sci-Fi had I not put that in my contract. I would never have been asked to do. I asked because 2018, 2017 through, I don't even want to say 2017. 2016 is when we broke Netflix for Luke Cage, season 1. And I feel like it was sort of the Wild Wild West when it came to like geekdom and stuff. And the MCU Endgame wasn't out yet. We were still in like the Captain
In the
America
ending game.
Winter Soldier, phase. Like, but the MCU was a thing. Fandom was a thing. But harnessing fandom, people didn't know how to do. Bloggers, people on social media, we knew how to do that. So I think that was the big thing for me, being able to um, use what I knew and apply it to production and stuff like that at scale. And that was so it looks like I just popped up out of nowhere, but I didn't. I was in the background either editing or producing or doing something, and then I just said, hey, yeah, I'm gonna try this.
Yeah, no, I think the totally like I feel like from like the beginning, early stages of like blerdom or blurred culture online, I feel like it was you on Black Girl Nerds and Black Nerd Problems that I always like saw.
Yeah, and we would see each other at events and be like, what's
Yeah,
up? It was
yeah,
all and they were lucky enough to have teams of people. I didn't until
right.
very
That's a
recently.
major difference.
Until very recently, I did not have a team.
Yeah.
And that has been one of the biggest thing I've struggled with is consistency for that reason, because
Mhm.
burnout is real and she does not play.
No, she will make you sit down.
She will, and I am a stroke survivor, so there are times that I'm like, I'm sitting down now. And I think that was the other thing. In 2013, that's when I had a series of strokes, and I went through a lot that year. And I tell people all the time when they go, "Oh my God, how do you deal with fandom and how do you deal with the hate sometimes?" And I'm like, I'm walking. I could use my hands. These are things that I couldn't do for 6 months. Like, perspective is a powerful, powerful motivator. And so some days, and I've been in things where people want to like, it's like, let me get this straight. You want to kill me because I don't like the Spider-Man you like. Seriously? This is what we're doing? Okay.
Ridiculous.
You know. And
Mhm.
so I think I have been blessed with that perspective so that I know enough to know when it's time to log off the internet. Like, I don't stay there like I'm going to fight you. But I am old school in that I will not fight you with the keyboard, but when I see you, it's on site. Like, there are certain people that I'm like,
Listen.
yeah, is there a problem? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, here, let me show you.
Right.
Like right
Screenshot.
here, like right here. That's not, and they're like, I was just joking. Really? Because that doesn't look like you're joking. So yeah, that's the part that people are very surprised about usually. Like, I'm really nice on the keyboard, but when you meet me, I'm like,
So
what seems to be the problem?
yeah. No, that's real because some people are so like they'll say anything online, but like in person, it's a completely different story. And it's like, we go say it, stand behind it. Like
Exactly. And that's the problem. Because it's like,
mhm.
see, now that I'm in your face, you're shaking. That shouldn't be the case. What happened to
Right.
all that you had coming from your chest when you were
Mhm.
online?
Right. Yeah.
So and that's what I really hope people understand. Like, sometimes when people say something crazy, like, go check their profile, they could be 12. Like, just
Yeah.
just go,
Yeah.
especially on TikTok. Like, I'm not gonna fight you.
Mm-mm.
Like, literally, yeah, I'm not fighting you. And here's the thing, I'm having a blast on TikTok, by the way. But there have been some horrible things that people have said, and I've been like, where is your mother? Like, like, are you even old enough to have a phone? What are you
Right.
doing?
Like you bypass this TikTok terms and agreements.
How did you get in here? So
Mhm.
yeah. But I've been lucky, and I was, again, right place, right time, but at the same time I was ready.
Right.
Um, nothing was given to me. Trust me. I can tell you that. There have been a lot of pitches and a lot of conversations and a lot of unsuccessful projects and a lot of things that didn't go well and a lot of very bad makeup days. um that have just led me to, but I knew I could do the work as an 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 entertainment journalist in this space. It took me a long time to call myself a journalist because I went to Northwestern. So I'm thinking Medill School of Journalism, you know, research and investigative reporting. And I've done investigative reporting, but we have a thing. I was raised with the, if you didn't go to school and get that title, you can't call yourself that. That's not the world we live in now, because you can learn anything on YouTube, honestly, and
Mhm.
learn more than the average person who's gone to school, and actually know more about it. So
And like the
um
experience throughout the years, like you've been writing for so long, like
exactly. And I actually had to have a conversation with a seasoned journalist to tell me that. She was like, okay, I've been writing for a decade, and so have you. It doesn't matter that you don't have a journalism degree. You have a media degree, but that doesn't mean that you
yeah.
can. And so I had to get past that so that I could, because I've not only been writing entertainment journalism, but I've been writing scripts and I've been writing things like that, and then, with the video editing on top of it. The book was new.
I was just gonna mention that. I was like, speaking of like people who like come with that energy, like, did you say something? I feel like, yeah, the book is definitely where I wanted to go next. Is just how did that come about? Yeah, that is different. You're about well, you are an author.
Yeah, well,
You're about
that's
to
what
be
I'm
a
saying.
published
That now I
author.
have to fight calling myself. So now you see my profile just says writer because I can't. Again, it's too much.
You're an
Um,
author, accept it.
I am an author.
Thank you.
I okay. So it's very strange, but they came to me, and the they was weird because it was Marvel, but it was not directly from Marvel. So when you write prose work for Marvel, whether or not that's YA or kids lit, and no, they're not the same thing, or children's lit, just found out recently that's also not the same thing. They have these different subsidiaries. Simon and Schuster covers most of it. but then there are subsidiaries of Simon and Schuster, including this company called Becker Mayer. I had never heard of them, neither had my Google, and they went into my junk mail several times before somebody said, look, somebody from Marvel's trying to get in touch with you. And I was like, what? And so I had to go look and found this email, and they're like, hey, got on the phone, and they were like, we want you to write. We're very interested in you writing a book for us about the Dora Milaje. And I'm like, are you sure you meant me? Which, listen to me, that is not what you're supposed to do. When your blessings come your way, you're not supposed to say, I don't think you mean me. Don't do that.
I'm glad they didn't listen to you.
They were like, yes, we mean you. You come highly recommended. And then, of course, also something you're not supposed to say, who? You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to say,
I'm glad you said that.
thank you so much. I did ask, and I did ask later, you're not supposed to do that though. You're supposed, because I immediately was like, huh? And I was like, okay, we'll get there. But so I was excited to do it. One of the reasons that made me say yes was the book is written in journal form. And any book that's written in journal form, it's almost like a series of short stories because they're entries. And I'm like, okay, entries, articles, I see the connection. I could do that because I've written things that are like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 words, but I hadn't written like I hadn't looked at it like a book. And when you have YA books with pictures, it actually comes out to be about, you know, you could get it in like 50,000 words. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I swallowed my pride and I said, this is terrifying, but I'm going to try this. And it was really terrifying because I was like, oh, I need to, they don't give you a lot of time to write these things. I think I had 10 weeks to write the entire book.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. You don't have a lot of time. Maybe I had 15 weeks. It's just still it was definitely less than 20 weeks. There were weeks involved. It wasn't years. And it was, when I started looking at it and I started thinking about it, I said, you know what? The Dora Milaje don't have a connected story. They always show up in somebody else's story. This is a very unique opportunity. And then it was just talking with everybody about it, like behind the scenes, Marvel and Simon & Schuster and everything. It was a very interesting meeting at first. The first meeting was terrifying. There was like 20 different people on this Zoom and they were all there for me. And I was like, I am petrified, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting meeting because they wanted to hear some of my ideas and they really liked them. And I was like, okay, well, if they really like them, then I might be onto something. The very strange thing about writing licensed work is that they don't really tell you where the fence is. You don't know it until you hit it. And then you're like, you can't do that. I'm like, okay. So the only warning I got in the beginning was you have to stick to the comics, not the MCU. Which to me was a little disheartening because I know a lot of Black folks got into Black Panther and comics through the movies. So I'm like, okay, that means Nakia's out because Nakia in the comics is dead in every iteration. She's had met several and they're all dead. So it's like, I was excited, but in the beginning, it really felt like a thesis because I really had to pull from a bunch of different, not just Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, but also, of course, Christopher Priest, because he created the Dora Milaje, but then also Little Don McGregor, definitely some Jason Aaron, also Jonathan Hickman, also Jonathan Mayberry. Like Jonathan Mayberry created the Midnight Angels. So, and then of course Roxane Gay and, you know, Yoma Harvey. So it was interesting, basically finding a thread that I could pull multiple threads that I could pull in between all these stories to create one story. So what Protectors of Wakanda actually is a training manual that is given from elder Dora to younger Dora as they come through the training program. So I actually got to formulate how the Dora are trained, what they learn, what they do, what their tenets are, things like that. It's not a workout book. I don't know who said that on social media, but all these people like fitness book. I'm like, it's not a fitness book. I don't know who said this. I don't know who started this crazy. This is not a workout book, and you are going to be very disappointed. Um,
I kind of want the workout book though now, to be honest with you. Separately. Like this book sounds amazing, but I
but
also kind of
listen,
like
I don't want to
that
write
one.
it though because I am not in shape, so I don't want to be the
Neither am
one.
I. That's why I need the book.
So it was but it was a lot of fun. It was, I think the first part of the book for me really felt like a thesis because again I had to do all this research, but then I got to do some really fun stuff and I got to we know Okoye, we know Io, we know Anika. Um, but there's also Tila, who's actually the head of the Midnight Angels, and there's Narima, and there's all these other little Dora that randomly get named occasionally that I got to give a little bit of life to. And so the book covers kind of all the things that the different Dora have to do and then all of their outfits. That was the part that was the part I was adamant about. I'm like, I'm gonna need y'all to get, because this is the thing, when you work on a prose book, you don't always get to choose your artists. And I had the same thing. So I could give my choices, but it was up to the publisher and Marvel and whoever to pick who they wanted to pick. And I'm like, I need you to understand that cosplayers are going to need these pictures. So I need
Yes.
you to make sure that we are doing this properly. Um, so that thing is one thing I'm excited about, like people seeing the different outfits. And just also the other really cool thing is the book is sort of it's published by the same people who did the Jedi Manual. And anybody who has a Jedi Manual knows that even though there's all this lore in there, there's different Jedi that are writing in the margins and stuff. And so my book is a similar thing. It's a journal, and that because it was passed down, there's different Dora that write different things in there. And it's kind
I
of
love
funny
that.
to see, like, that's where the Easter eggs are. That's where, for people who were like Black Panther fans, they're gonna be like, oh, I know what that meant. I know that reference. That's gonna and I can't wait for people to uncover those. And then but it was definitely a challenge. It was definitely the scariest thing I ever did. I definitely cried over that book. I was like, you're gonna hate it. And then I went from that to being like, oh my god, I'm so excited. And now I'm kind of petrified because I'm, just like waiting for it to come out. But it's really a lot of fun. And I these kind of books, you don't have room to write, like they don't let you write like dedicated to or anything because it's licensed material. But I the book is really for my niece. Like I have my baby niece, she's only 3, but when she's like 10, I'm gonna be the cool aunt that like wrote the book
Yeah.
about Dora Milaje, and then like, I'll be able to be like maybe the person that comes to school for like the show and tell, the cool parent.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, I'm waiting.
Happy for everyone.
Right. So I'm hoping that's who I really wrote it for, so that she could see she's gonna grow up and not know that there weren't black superheroes. Like she's not gonna grow up like us, like, okay, Panther's black because that's what we want him to be.
Right.
Like she's
Piccolo, yes.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like
Mhm.
she's gonna grow up knowing that, yeah, no, they're my heroes and there's another one. And um so I'm very excited about that. And I'm excited to know that a lot of other young girls are going to be able to see this. Of course, I want my peers and my friends to like it too, but it is a YA book. Um, I think the other thing that I'm excited about is there are certain things that I've known, but I don't think a lot of other people know. One thing that I can share that we've talked about a bit is I think a lot of people, especially those who only know the MCU, know T'Challa and T'Chaka, maybe a little bit about T'Chaka's father, Azuri. Um, but there are 16 Black Panther that are canon, and 2 of them are women. And a lot of people don't know that. And I get to talk about them, and I get to talk about the Dora that were with them, and I can talk about uh I think the other thing that I'm excited about is because I was able to talk about the Midnight Angels, that means I could talk about Doom War because that's where they were born out of. And anybody who knows anything about the Doom War run in Marvel, there were like 500, 600 Dora. So even though people have this visualization of only 4 Dora walking around, there's
Yeah.
a lot of them. And, so I think what I did was I started with a bunch of questions. Like, what happens when Adora gets injured? What happens when Adora retires? Like, if she ages out, like, we ain't got 90 years olds on the field, so what do they do?
Right.
Like, where do they go?
Yeah.
Um, we have um and also you see people just using different things. There's different artillery and there's different weapons and there's different, even when Okoye says, ugh, guns so primitive. But what if it's more than that? Like, for instance, like vibranium is really, really valuable, and no one wants it to fall in the wrong hands. So if you have a vibranium bullet and you shoot somebody, you got to go get that bullet.
Right.
So it's also it's not just primitive, it's a pain.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to, win a thing, it's just easier to just stick somebody and go versus shoot them, because we don't got time to be going retrieving all this artillery.
Right.
It's kind of like Hawkeye trying to go back and get those arrows. Like, this is not convenient.
Mm-mm. No.
So performing surgery on the field, that's not convenient. So there's certain things I was able to do, and like when the Dora Milaje show up, even though this is not referenced in my book because it's MCU, but Falcon and the Winter Soldier, when Io is working with Bucky and she's trying to break him of his programming or whatever, I kept watching that scene going, how did she learn how to do that? Where did that come from? Where was that training? And so that's the kind of stuff that I tried to put into this book. Like, what are the different, what make up the Dora? Because people just see them as these bald women with these spears that'll kill you, but there's more. There's a Roxane Gay wrote that. There's love there. There's sisterhood there. There's a sense of responsibility there. Where does that come from? And who built that? And what tenets are those built on? Um, so just trying to build out this lore a little bit. I'm very excited, and I'm super excited for people to see it. I really just want people to enjoy the book. A lot of people are like, "Oh, what if it's part of the TV show?" I'm not there yet. I just want the book to come out, and I want people to enjoy it and enjoy what have as much fun with it as I did. But it was very exciting. I will definitely write a book again. I don't know how soon it'll be a licensed book, but I will definitely write a book again. I've got other stories in me, but I think this gave me the confidence to go, okay, I can do this.
Yay.
I can do
Okay.
this.
That makes me so happy. Yeah, I'm very excited for this. Like as you're
Thank
explaining it,
you.
I just feel like you really took a storyteller's approach to it. And I feel like that's just really cool how you like went through and thought, like, what don't people know? What's not as known? And even just like filling in kind of like the gaps that were
Yeah,
there.
like I've had people talk to me about, like, oh, what about how young they were? And it's really funny because if you go back into Christopher Priest's run, yes, when he's first introducing them, do they look young? Absolutely. They don't look like children, but they do look young. Um, but it's not T'Challa. It's Everett Ross. It's the white FBI agent who's saying, "Oh my God, they look so hot. Oh my God, but I
Mhm.
could go to jail because they're so young." Like, it's him that's again using these black women as objects of desire, as
Right.
opposed to who they act, the respecting them for who they
Warriors.
actually are.
Mhm.
And so one thing I can share is that there was some discussion early on about, like, the ages of these girls. Like, they can't be child brides. I'm like, they've never been child brides. Who told you they were child brides? And it was like,
Right.
well, aren't they supposed to be 14 and 15? I said, no, that's what Everett Ross thought they were. Well, why would he think they were so young? I said, have you never met a black woman that looks younger than she actually is?
Mhm.
So there were those kind of nuances I liked putting in there too. And then the other thing I tried very hard to do was make it feel authentic to not just the area but the continent. And I think that's something that's very difficult to do with Black Panther as a whole, not just my book,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it's a character that was created by white men that has been reimagined by black folks. Ta-Nehisi Coates, Christopher Priest, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Reginald Hudlin, um, uh, um, Roxane Gay, Yona Harvey, Evan Narciss, reimagined by them, and now me as well. But the parameters of the world are still what was created in canon, and some of that canon is not as African as we would like it to be. So it's about pushing those boundaries a little bit, stretching, you know, because there's certain things that I wasn't able to do this, but there's certain things I've always wanted to do. Like it's just always bothered me how nobody in Wakanda has a last name. Everybody in the MCU
Mm,
has a surname, but nobody in Wakanda does. And it just
right.
bothers me. I'm like, except for Queen Divine Justice, Asira, because she came to the US. It's like, oh, well, she became American. That's why she has the last name. But
Mm,
anybody who knows anybody African knows that Africans have got like 17 names.
yeah.
And it's just a very strange, and that's not, it's just one of those things that you can't change because that's how it started. And if you give these people last names, we got to go back and retcon
Everything.
everybody. And we're not
Right.
doing that. And I'm like, but giving them only one name is very slave like. And I don't like that. But that's not something I can change. I what I did do was really try and give agency and a concept of the regions that everybody was from, so that their some of their cultural things, came out. But yeah, there's just certain things that you can't change because they're canon, and if that canon is not written by somebody like us, we're not going to see that. Um, but I was able to weave in some real life African history in there, and that is something that I can't wait to talk about when it comes out.
That sounds really exciting. Well, I will tell you, even if you still are, hopefully you're not still questioning it, but I feel like you're absolutely the right person. They reached the right person, not just because of your experience, not just because of your like vast knowledge, but just like you're so passionate about it and you really like took it to heart. And I feel like that's just shows, you're the right person for the job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, listen,
Mhm.
there's going to be some fanboy somewhere that doesn't like it. And I've
I
already settled
mean,
myself on that. But I think the majority of the people will
mhm.
enjoy, I hope will enjoy what I tried to do.
Yeah.
And I hope it opens discussion. And what I really hope happens is that some of the characters or some of the situations get comic books,
Mm.
out of them. Because I think that would be fun if some
Yeah.
people and it doesn't have to be me. I would love it if somebody else did it, but if somebody could take some of the stories or some of the people and just go, hey, let's make a thing out of this, I think that might be exciting.
That would be really exciting. I mean, it's all exciting, but that would be exciting too, for sure. I'm curious, as you were like reading, rereading, like basically the whole Black Panther comic
Yeah, it
lore.
was a lot. Oh my god, my comicsology bill was crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I went through the Priest run a few years ago, and that alone is like
It's a
a
lot.
lot. And I interviewed Reginald Hudlin around the time Black Panther came out, and so that was really exciting. So I read his run, and of course Ta-Nehisi Coates, but like so much more. But in your reading, what would you say is your favorite Dora moment from
um
the comics?
from the comics, my favorite Dora moment is definitely in it's definitely in Doom War. It is in Doom War. I'm trying to remember exactly what's happening, but the Midnight Angels, no, the Dora know that they're going to have to go out and fight the Doombots and sort of stall until T'Challa and reinforcements show up, and they know a lot of their ranks might die. And um Anika says, like, she has this incredible speech, and they're all just standing there like, yeah, this is what we do. This is, and she says we are she talks about the fact that we are, daughters of the ancestors, and we are Wakandan women, the deadliest of the species. And it's just one of those things where it's like, there's war, there's gonna be more war, and the dudes are gonna do what they gotta do, but we run things differently. And it's just one of those moments that I'm like, and it's so weird because it wasn't a woman who wrote it, but I just love um that concept.
Right.
And it was just the first time you really saw the Dora having agency. And then of course, when the Midnight Angels are introduced, Because what people don't realize is the Midnight Angels are introduced, and then like 2 pages later, they hang out with Deadpool, and it's like them and Deadpool trying to infiltrate
Mhm.
Latveria, and it's hilarious because
That sounds
Deadpool can't keep
amazing.
his hands to himself. But it's just, um, and that's one of those things. Like if Deadpool ever goes to Wakanda, I need this scene to happen.
Oh my gosh, I want it so bad now. I need that. I
But yeah,
absolutely
it
need
was
that.
it. I think that one is powerful. In fact, it's so powerful. I know I quoted part of that speech in the book. Um, that's definitely my favorite
Mhm.
Dora story. Now, I'm not knocking also Roxane Gay's run, and I was very lucky to be able to have a conversation with Roxane Gay about her comic book that's out the banks that she's adapting for TV. And
I
at the
love
end of that
that.
interview, I was like, by the way, I'm writing this book and thank you so much. I started like fangirling a little bit, and it was
Yeah.
so cool. And it's like, I just thanked her because she built this foundation that
Mhm.
I could then, build on.
Right.
And World of Wakanda is very, very close second, if not a tie,
Mhm.
because again, we are seeing the Dora, and they are not just these drones of people who just do whatever the king says. They're independent people who are like, we're here, you're not. What is your problem? Because for people who didn't read that comic, the Dora actually, for the first time, go against T'Challa when they think that he's basically lost his mind and siding with
Right.
Namor, who has just destroyed the better part of the Golden City. So they don't know there's a whole other thing happening. But it was a really interesting run, and without what Christopher Priest did, and without what